voluto iniziare con la presenza dell'ingegnere D'Aprile del Ministero
Unfortunately, Mr. D'Aprile from the ministry is not with us yet. He's the Minister for the Environment and Energy Security. Without further ado, I would suggest to start.
Good morning to everybody. I would like to give my warm welcome to the first Soil Health Official Convention organized by the National Coordination Group of the Bioeconomy under the presidency of the Council of Ministers in collaboration with ISPRA, CREA, and Resoil Foundation. First of all, I would like to heartily thank all the organizers and also Fabio Fava and the very high-level speakers who accepted to contribute to this initiative. It has to be an open, shared, and participatory advisory event which aims to set the course of soil regeneration in Italy and Europe. This is the ambition, of course. And I know that, we have an inflation of conferences, unfortunately, and a lot of words, and we still have a huge problem at climate level and soil. So we need to transform words in real facts. This is a real aim we have in front of us. So I hope that from this event, we can really draft something effective. According to the Caring for Soil is Caring for Life report, which has been produced by the board of Mission Soil Health and Food, I am proud that I was part of this board. This report has been published by the European Commission in 2020. And the results are that 60–70% of all the European soils are unhealthy due to the current management practices, to pollution, to urbanization, and the effects of climate change, which is not the main effect still, but in the next years will be. Specifically, 25% of soils in Southern, Central, and Eastern Europe are at high or very high risk of desertification, while today's rate of soil reuse, as it is indicated by the ISPRA, the annual ISPRA report, is stuck at 13%. The geopolitical crisis has stressed even more the problem of scarcity of raw materials, and huge and enormous challenge of the next years. And we are perfectly aware that this will be really the big challenge, whose effects we are already experiencing every day. And in this context, the aspiration to self-sufficiency of our territories appears in all its relevance, and it is strongly connected to health of soil, to the health of our soil and our ability and our willingness to regenerate them. So because the climate change effects are becoming more extreme year by year, year after year, reducing the efficiency also of the few measures we are putting in place. So, we are in an emergency accelerating process of degradation, and we need to be really active. More than ever before, we cannot afford to face the series of multiple and interconnected crises in which the climate crisis and geopolitical tensions risk fueling all the others, without finding answers to the problem of resource independence, overcoming the tragedy of the common goods exploited to the maximum by few and regenerated by none. The current scenario should trigger an unprecedented acceleration. I know that we used a lot of times acceleration and we didn't do a lot. It's the opposite, but we need unprecedented acceleration now toward the real decoupling of development from resource use. This is absolutely a needed chance. And reuse of resources. It is clear that towards a real soil regeneration, we must learn to do more with less, to decouple the use of resources from development. Ecomondo is the most important Italian event, perhaps European, dedicated to the circular economy and the bioeconomy, as well as one of the most important in Europe. And there is no more suitable place to talk about soil, a non-renewable resource, as all we know, fundamental for life on Earth, and at the core of the pioneering activities and primates of the Italian and European bioeconomy. Bioeconomy is a tool to help soil health. Of course, it can be also the opposite. It depends how we decline this type of concept, but it's a very important element. As reported by the new Green Italy 2022 report presented just 25 October this year, the circular bioeconomy is capable of relaunching European sustainability from an economic, environmental, and social point of view, accelerating the ecological transition and enhancing our autonomy, our value chains, and their resilience. In Italy, this sector represents 10% of the value of production, with 364.3 billion in turnover, about 2 million of people employed. EU is the worldwide leader, this is also important, in bioeconomy ahead of USA and China. So this is a sector where Europe is ahead, at least it was, we will see. Italy is one of the European leaders in this sector and among the world leader in bio-based chemicals with cutting-edge expertise and world-leading plants. Italian agriculture is among, of course, nothing is enough, but at least Italian agriculture is among the most suitable in Europe, sustainable in Europe, and it is a leader in organic farming, for example, with a 17.4% share of the utilized agricultural area number 2021, and a general reduction in plant protection products of about 19%. Italy is also first in Europe in the collection of organic waste, and especially food waste, 47% of food waste versus the 16% of the European average. Thanks to our pioneering activities in the green chemistry for bioeconomy, our country has created a platform. A lot of things are available to build an acceleration in this sector. Just some examples: a circular bioeconomy platform with the multiple players. We put together farmers, composters, retailers, municipalities to work together around the concept of organic waste, and a virtuous policy for organic waste management has been created since years in Italy. And we have now an infrastructure, not enough again, but the most advanced in comparison with the rest of Europe for organic waste treatment that can maximize quality compost, because still we have a lot to do, but can improve quality compost, enhance the value of organic carbon, and so carbon sequestration, carbon farming are all connected with the use and evaluation of carbon. World-first technologies that, without consuming soil, have made it possible to transform dismissed plants into biorefineries capable of producing bioproducts, bioenergy, and exploiting residues and byproducts in a circular bioeconomy logic. Again, it's not enough to have bio-based products to be sustainable, but it's the model to do more with less, really can create opportunities for these new products to be catalyst of change. And agricultural value chains based on low input dry crops, capable of both supplying raw materials and regenerating marginal soil, for example. Biodegradable and compostable bioproducts embedded into systemic territorial projects, which from the outset were not designed to drown the world, but to solve water and soil pollution. This includes different bioproducts, for example, in agricultural use, that could already help, is helping in reality, but in measure which is far less than what it could be, and but already can help farmers achieve farm-to-fork targets. Such, for example, the use of soil mulch films which are able to avoid soil erosion, to decrease risk, to reduce and cancel the risk of microplastic dispersion, and to create plastic waste production, and also to reduce fertilizers use and the use of herbicides inputs, even on non-traditional mulched crops. And then first of its kind products, such as bioherbicides, based on pelargonic acid, a natural occurring substance that preserve biodiversity and represent a sustainable alternative to widely used substances that are increasingly at the center of the debate. The circular bioeconomy model we have built over the years is a sound demonstration that is feasible to do more with less, trying to regenerate soil, which is increasingly at risk. The bioproducts and bioprocesses, bioeconomy, used as catalyst, as I said, for the ecological transition can be a great opportunity. But on this point, I would like to stress a concept that from my point of view is very important. I must admit my personal great concern about what is happening. We have to remember that in 2021, the mass of human constructions exceeded the biomass of nature. In 1960, we have to remember that human constructions were 10% of natural biomass. So we are facing an exponential phenomenon that explains perfectly the growing need for energy and for raw materials. However, wanting to counteract the exponential phenomenon with the top-down measures risk creating further damages. This is, from my point of view, a very critical situation that we are experiencing at this moment. As Umberto Eco wrote in its Foucault Pendulum, for every complex problem, there is always a simple solution, and it is the wrong one. So we have to be very careful on this. There isn't just the question of identifying the measures, but also how to implement them into the territories to counteract the degradation of soil while protecting the agro-industrial and social fabric that characterize the EU territories. You know, we are in very diverse territories, and their specificities are also important. And however, in this moment, they have never been at risk as in this moment. So it's not just a question of the fragile situation of soil, but also fragile situation of society and the social fabric in the territories. Now more than ever, the top-down and the silos measures that ignore the interactions between environmental, social, and economical aspects without a real understanding of the phenomena and the specificities of territories risk triggering other devastating exponential phenomena. So if we act in very short term, in a moment of exponential phenomena with actions which are impacting immediately, but in silos logic, the problem is very huge. So the measures to counteract the multi-crisis that will be put in place will give, I think, a sense of what Europe wants to be. Only a normalized territory for a single market, or instead an economy with roots in the territories and integrated supply chains where participatory innovation, starting from the different soils and their uses, allows an evolution of ecological and technological knowledge linked to the cultural evolution of the EU territories and their specificities. I believe that, as you understand, this has to be the Europe we want, but I think that the debate of today can tell us something more. The challenge is to turn this unprecedented multi-crisis into an opportunity of regeneration. Europe and Italy have a strong strategic interest in the sector and will have to play the European game adequately to announce and not waste what has been built so far, making the most of the opportunity for accelerating for the acceleration that the sector offers in soil regeneration. The State General for Soil Health, therefore, intend to bring together the main national and international stakeholders and experts to draft a programmatic platform aimed at supporting the development of an Italian soil strategy through the analysis of the environmental, economic, legislative, social scenario of good practices, and also multidisciplinary and multi-actor existing projects, which are already providing answers in the direction. For this reason, today, it's a great pleasure for me to host such distinguished speakers from the EU and abroad, Farmers Association, Academy, soil experts, the innovation and environmental world, and I think she didn't join us still, so I hoped that the conference was opened by Mrs. D'Aprile. She is not here yet, so I feel that we will pass to Fabio Fava, and I think you know all Fabio, and I think Fabio is chairman of the Scientific Committee of Ecomondo, professor of Industrial and Environmental Biotechnology at the Faculty of Engineering, University of Bologna, Deputy National Representative for Mission Soil Health and Food, a member of the National Bioeconomy Coordination Group, and the presidency of the Council of Ministers. And thank you, Fabio. I leave it to you.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Technical,
Sure.
Only one technical information for those who are listening through the headphones. You have Italian language translation on channel 2 and English language on channel 3, if I'm not wrong.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, and Catia, thank you very much for the fantastic introduction to this session today. I apologize, but today we have the Deputy Minister for the Environment for the first time here, and Engineer D'Aprile is part of the delegation. I'm sure that she will join us, but it's complex, but she will be back for sure. I reach her. Okay, so I'm here today on behalf of the Italian delegation who is interacting with the European Commission, in particular DGRTD, who is taking care to the mission soil. With this role, I'm giving you some insights on what the Commission is doing. Catia introduced already very nicely the emergency that we have to face. The Commission put on this priority a number of actions addressed to sustain research and innovation, but also policies in order to face those emergencies. Horizon Europe is the new program that the Commission launched, and there are many opportunities for sustaining those priorities in the frame of it. You see here cluster 6, but the mission, that is the topic today, is a particular measure that Horizon Europe put in place for entering closely to the territories. Catia pushed a lot the role of territories. We have to enter there, and the mission has this particular mandate, rather than running research and innovation. Research and innovation is performed in the frame of cluster 6, in which you see in the yellow color, but the mission is trying to transfer, interconnect the actors and transfer it on the territories in the whole Europe. There are other missions interesting for these soil issues and partnerships too. There are 3-4 partnerships specifically addressing the priorities that we are discussing here today. So please take this all into account. Mission soil health. Catia already anticipated the major priorities of the mission. Again, The main aim is to engage, enter in the territories, but for helping the territories to reduce the desertification, preserve organic carbon of the soil, of course, stop soil sealing, and especially in the urban areas, reduce the soil pollution and improve sustainable reclamation of contaminated sites, contaminated soil, prevent erosion, improve soil structure and soil biodiversity, global EU footprint on soils, and improve literacy, the connection, the cooperation with the society, with the citizens. This strategy was put in place by a group of 15 experts selected by the European Commission. Among them, we had the privilege to have Catia Bastioli. Dr. Bastioli was one of the most dynamic actors here. They put together the strategy. They put together, first of all, they set the scene, and then they put together a strategy that resulted in the production of a mission implementation plan that set the need of actions at the European level. Now we have a second board that has been launched very recently. Unfortunately, we do not have any Italian representative there, but this is another matter. We can manage it in any case by working together and be more present in Brussels. So again, the mission, back to the mission. You saw the priorities. They has been put in place taking into account what was already published by the European Commission, what was already supported by the European Commission. Here you have the several strategies, policy documents that the Commission put in place when it launched the Green Deal. Of course, the role of soil in addressing the Green Deal priorities is crucial. And you see the list of things that soil can do for allowing us to have carbon neutrality in Europe by 2030. And again, this strategy is not only launching something, but an integrated view. You see here, mission soil deal for Europe is in the bottom, but is part of an integrated strategy that is also seeing the setup of a soil strategy, soil health law in Europe. This is something that is moving, is coming. And on the right place in the top, you see observatory, soil observatory at the DG JRC. DG JRC is here. Tomorrow they will deliver a plenary talk. We have the Director General of DG JRC tomorrow morning. They launch an observatory because we need data. We need data. Catia presented many data. We need to have data, store data, and make them available to anyone reacting. So the strategy was integrated, not only research, not only policy, but a unique strategy combining all needs, the actions that they planned. Knowledge, we need, again, knowledge, always, we need knowledge, data, technologies, infrastructures. Yes, this is essential, but we need to work on what we're still missing, because we have a lot of things, something's missing. So this was an assessment, and then they push on the needs that we still have. And then second point, work on the real sites, on the territories, as Catia pushed many times, co-creating with the territories, demonstrating, working with the people in the farms. This is the exercise, very relevant, that we need to do. And then monitoring, reporting, collecting data, and make data available to anyone interested in working in the field. And then finally, fourth point, communication, engagement, citizens engagement, young generation engagement here, but also outside. A lot of young people are. We need this joint action. And this is part of the initiatives of the Commission. The Commission launched the first call for proposals. You see here the list. There were some topics on indicators, because we need to improve some indicators. Soil nutrition is a topic that we need to cover more efficiently. We need more research and innovation here. But then the other actions are engaging actors, farmers, municipalities, citizens, building partnerships, financing, new business models, because we need to also create economic opportunities in these actions as usual. And then education. These were topics launched for the first year. And here you have the participation of Italy. Italy is number 2 in terms of presence in the funded project under the mission. Is the second one. You see, is a complicated graph, but you see Italy is a second position, not very high in rate of success, but second in terms of presence in the funded projects. Then we had the 2022 call for proposals, in which we covered again some research and innovation needs, biodiversity, decarbonization, carbon farming, bio-waste, use of bio-waste in soil regeneration, etc. And then again, partnerships, engaging, financing. The topics here are under evaluation. This is something which is in advance, something which is coming in a few months. I can only give you some insights to be ready, to allow you to be ready. We will push digitalization in the area that we are discussing. So more use of digital systems, soil pollution processes, modeling, again, digital decision support tools, innovation to prevent and combat desertification, subsoil. The idea is to start working more closely to the subsoil for understanding more. We know a little bit. We need to create new knowledge here. And then bringing community citizens together, et cetera, et cetera. That's very interesting, in my view, very interesting. I push this a lot. Interconnections among the different missions, because we have missions on healthy water and seas. We had yesterday a meeting on this in the other room. So water and soil are interconnected. We need common actions. And again, interconnection in between climate. We have other mission on climate neutrality, water and soil. Again, why not? They have something at the interface. So we started also launching this call for proposals. This will be published in 2023, January, so be ready. This will be the topics, but of course, with more details that I cannot provide you because these are restricted still. But these are the topics that will be. We will organize a info day in Brussels, European Commission at the Italian level as a Ministry for Research and APRE with us. But again, don't forget that there are many other opportunities coming in our cluster 6 and the partnerships. Here you have the data. At the end of this month, we will have the cluster 6 work package 2023-2024 out, and be ready to join, take advantage for that. Here you have additional info. The last message from my side, which is the one from which Catia started. This is what is happening in Brussels. And I personally, as a citizen, as a professor, as a delegate of the Ministry for Research, and so on, I thank Catia very much because she did a great work in the board that started this exercise in 2019. So what we have, what I presented to you, came from a strategic work that she contributed to put in place in Brussels. But now we need to do the work at the national level. We are fantastic. You saw the results. First call, second country. I'm old delegate since 2013. It's not easy to be the number 2nd at the European level, especially always after Spain. But to be before France, before Germany is a good information, trust me. But we are fragmented. We have many things moving. And this is the reason why we decided together at the Presidency of Council of Ministers with the Coordination Board of Bioeconomy, mobilizing 5 ministries, mobilizing 20 regions, the Agency of Cohesion, the technology clusters that are here today. Here, the circular bioeconomy cluster. And the other one is the blue grow cluster. The other one is down there making another event on food, et cetera, et cetera. All of them are together. And together we decided with the with the Resoil Foundation, with ISPRA, which is also joining the board of the Presidents of Council of Ministers, CREA, yeah, in Italian is CREA, which is here represented by prominent experts. So all together, we decided to merge, to try to merge what is ongoing, because we need to transfer all these things into the territories, and we need to be together. We cannot go in silos. We need to be together, present what also is coming out. Anyone should know, but more importantly, take inputs from the territories and transfer to Brussels. This is also our exercise of the delegation for DGRTD. Then there are other delegates covering the other directorate at the European Commission, but we need to be together, go to the territory, understand, present what is going on, because anyone can take advantage from the innovation made, and then take the inputs to bring back to Brussels. This is the idea behind this initiative that is starting today. I really thank again Catia, Resoil, the other colleagues that agree on this idea, because it's strategic. Sorry, these are the other documents related to the bioeconomy that we produced together in the Presidency of Council of Ministers since 2016. We started in 2016, so long story. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Fabio. And I think, thank you for your passion too, because we need a bit of passion to change things, you know, this is very important. So thank you for that. Our hope is indeed to have the presidents of the Council of Ministers which can play a role. This is very important to have the new government involved. And I'm sorry that Mrs. D'Aprila is not still here. So we will continue with the conference. Let's now move the heart of this conference with the soil strategy for 2030 to address the topic within the European policy framework and international agendas. I'm delighted to open this first section of the day with Lucrezia Caon, who will tell us about the FAO, the Food Agriculture Organization's point of view. Lucrezia is a soil scientist, specialized in soil management, land tenure, and soil governance. They joined the Global Soil Partnership Secretariat of FAO in 2014. She coordinates the implementation of activities of soil laboratories through the Global Soil Laboratory Network, GLOSOLAN, and is the regional facilitator for the Asian Soil Partnership, the Near East and North African Soil Partnership, and the Pacific Soil Partnership. Thank you so much for being here with us, and the stage is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bastioli.
Sorry, just one point. At the end of your speech, if you can also give as a last indication one thing which should be done immediately.
Sure.
This is can help us to organize then the final document.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
My
Sorry
pleasure.
to interrupt.
No
Thank
problem. You. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's a pleasure for me to be here. So I was asked to present about the status of soil health. Let me go straight to the point. In 2015, the Intergovernmental Technical Panel on Soil and the FAO assessed that 33% of global soils are already degraded. This number is quite scary, but let me tell you that if business as usual continues and no measures are adopted, we are expecting to have over 90% of soils to become degraded by 2050. In 2015, the FAO still published a publication called the Status of the World Soil Resources Report. And in this report, we identified 10 main threats to soil. These slides provide you an overview of the status and trends of these threats in the different regions in the world. And at the global level, I can tell you that soil erosion, organic carbon change, nutrient imbalance, loss of biodiversity, and soil pollution were identified as the major threats to soil. But what does it mean, and why should we care? Well, the well-being of at least 3.2 billion people worldwide is affected by soil and land degradation processes. If this still doesn't mean much to you, let me tell you that in 2021, around 2.3 billion people were moderately or severely food insecure. Despite what there is in the Sustainable Development Goals, for the 4th year in a row, there has been a rise in the world hunger. We are reaching levels from a decade ago. We are talking about 828 million people facing hunger in the world, and projections are not getting any better because we expect that 8% of the world population will be facing hunger in 2030. Some of you might not know that 95% of the food we consume comes directly or indirectly from soil, and that 15 out of the 18 elements essential to plants are supplied by soils. Nutrient-depleted soils cannot produce nutritious food. In turn, this is leading to what is called hidden hunger. And hidden hunger is already affecting over 2 billion people worldwide. But soils do not only contain good elements, like nutrients. If soil are contaminated, the contaminants in the soil can be transferred to the plants, and therefore they will just be transferred through the food chain to animals and can end up affecting human well-being. I started by talking about the role of soil in providing food, because this is something we deal with every day, no? We care of having our breakfast, lunch, dinner, and we enjoy it. But soil do not only provide food to us and to animals. They are also a very important source of biodiversity. And someone can think, well, who cares about the microbes in the soil or the earthworms? Well, there is an inseparable interaction between the above ground and the below ground biodiversity. They are interconnected. If you damage or affect below ground biodiversity, you for sure affect the above ground biodiversity. But soil do much more than this. Soil has a role in the regulation of climate. Soil degradation has negative impacts on the soil because soil can become a source of greenhouse gases. So they can release greenhouse gases. But they can also help us in fighting climate change. And this is where you hear talking about soil organic carbon sequestration potential. The soil organic carbon sequestration potential was assessed to be between 0.14 and 0.56 gigatons per year. In the current map, you can see what can happen if we implement a sustainable soil management. The global adoption of sustainable soil management practices could potentially lead to a yearly mitigation of 8.6 to 33.8% of greenhouse gas emissions from the agricultural sector. And according to the IPCC, a better management of soils can offset 5 to 20% of current global greenhouse gas emissions. So I talk about food, I talk about biodiversity, I talked about climate change, but these are only a few of the many functions and ecosystem services that soil provide. Indeed, soils directly or indirectly contribute to achieve all the Sustainable Development Goals. And achieving the Sustainable Development Goals means tackling the main challenges that we are currently facing at the global level. Not last, population growth. Well, Dr. Fava also mentioned the impact of urbanization on our soil. So population growth will be accompanied by unprecedented rates of urbanization and demand of increased ecosystem services, also in terms of food. So this will put further pressure on our precious and fragile soil resources. getting to the end of my presentation, I would like to go back to the first slide I presented. I started by giving you these numbers. Then I would like to answer the question, how did we get to this point? No, if soils are so precious, how did we get to have 33% of them degraded already? Well, we got to this point because the soils have been neglected for a very long time. Their role has not been recognized at the international level as a consequence of their neglection at the national and regional level. As the former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon said in 2014, because it is everywhere, we tend to overlook that fact that soil is a limited natural resources. Limited natural resource because it can take up to 1,000 years to produce just 2-3 centimeters of soil. In 2012, well, I mentioned this year because it's in 2012 that the Global Soil Partnership was established and hosted by FAO as a mechanism to develop a single strong voice on soil issues and improve collaboration between all stakeholders. Over the years, the partnership was successful in triggering action by countries and multiple stakeholders and to place soil on the global agenda. Awareness-raising activities played a key role on accomplishing this achievement because people tend not to care about what they do not know. Today, soils are like never in the global agenda. However, the challenge is on how to ensure that soils are always recognized. So we need to consolidate this momentum into action by all. Everybody can play a role in preserving and improving the status of soil. I talked about actions, and with actions, I conclude my presentation. This is the new action framework of the Global Soil Partnership for the period 2022-2030. We are aiming to tackle global challenges through the promotion of and implementation of sustainable soil management. And we have concrete actions, initiatives, and programs to do this. These are reported here. Oh, this doesn't work. Here. So we organize our work in 6 action areas, as we call them. And for each of them, we have concrete programs that tackle all soil threats. Since time is limited, I cannot get into the details of each of these, but I'm open to answer your question in case of any. So with this, I conclude. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Caon, for this interesting presentation. Thank you also to Fao for the presence. As you rightly said, the change should be done urgently, and is unacceptable that we are still at this level. And so we need really to have at the center of our agenda soil, and to be, how to say, really active, proactive on this huge element of our life. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Should I give you the devo farti un
riassunto
di cosa?
No,
O dopo?
Dopo. No, direi alla fine ha un argomento specifico da lanciare in questo momento?
No, ma va bene.
Grazie. Okay, thank you. I now give the floor to Luca Montanarella. He's working since 1992 as scientific project manager. Is Montanarella is here?
I'm here, yes.
Can you hear me? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I hear you very well.
Perfect. He's working since 1992 as scientific project manager in the European Commission, leading the soil data and information systems activities of the Joint Research Center in support to the EU thematic strategy of soil protection and numerous other soil-related policies like the Common Agricultural Policy, the UNCCD, UNFCCC, CBD. He's responsible of the European Soil Data Center, the European Soil Information System, and the European Soil Bureau Network, Currently is project portfolio leader for the GRC work program 2021 to 2027 on soil health, including the newly established EU Soil Observatory, a very important reality. So, Mr. Montanarella, what about the state of health of European soil and how Europe has been monitoring it? Thank you for your presence here. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the introduction and thank you for the invitation to this event. Thank you to the invitation to the European Commission and particularly to the GRC. The GRC, for the ones who are not familiar with the GRC, is a service of the Commission which has as a task the task to provide the necessary data, scientific evidence, and solid facts and figures to our colleagues from the policy-making side, particularly concerning soils, of course, to my colleagues in DG Environment, and Andrea Vettori, my colleague from DG Environment, will tell you more about the policy-making side just after my presentation. So just to gain time, quickly, I would like to move to one of the main issues that should be kept in mind when we talk about soils in Europe. And this is something that we already published 20 years ago, which is the Soil Atlas of Europe that we compiled at that time to, for the first time, have a common understanding across the European Union and Europe of the different types of soils that we have. Soils are very different from air and water because soils are extremely diverse. So you have very different types of soils across the European Union. This means that if you want to address soils as air and water, you must take into account the local specificities of these different soils, which perform very, very different type of functions and have very different type of properties. If you look, for example, in Scandinavia, where we have mostly pod soils, these are highly acidic soils that need a different type of management than, for example, the soils in the Mediterranean region, which are usually can be soils or other type of soils, which need to be addressed in a different way. So already 20 years ago, we published this, and I think this needs to be kept in mind when we talk about soils in Europe. And we try to update this data constantly through our European Soil Data Center, and I really encourage everybody to have a look to our website at the European Soil Data Center, because you can download all the data for free and access all this. So just to gain time, already in 2006, we presented a first proposal of a thematic strategy to the Parliament and the Council, and at that time we singled out 7 basic functions that European soils perform for all of us. I don't know the details of that. Again, you can find all this in the documentation online. But what is important to keep in mind, soils perform not only the food production function, which is probably the one best known, which is the biomass production through agriculture and forestry, but perform a number of other functions which are of vital importance to all of us. These functions in Europe are under threat by different processes which go beyond just simple processes. Very often these are complex processes. You can talk about a sort of syndrome of different type of processes, often overlapping. So you have different type of degradation processes, particularly in Europe, due to the fact that Europe is highly densely populated, so the human pressure on soils is very high. We have a long history of using our soils. It's pretty hard in Europe still to find any soil which is not being affected by human activities. So you must keep in mind that these processes are pretty complex and often interacting with each other. So having said this, as you mentioned, the EU Soil Observatory was launched a couple of years ago, which is the new, let's say, vision that we have introduced following the European Green Deal. And the EU Soil Observatory is expanding what we have been doing over the last 20 years in the European Soil Data Center, which you can, which I will come back to, but it's also including elements which will come from the new monitoring system. I will talk a little bit about that. It includes also a very strong research and innovation component. It was said already in the introductory remarks. The EU Soil Observatory is very much instrumental to the soil mission. So we are in close collaboration with the various projects that will be financed by the Soil Mission and by other programs, so that we can have a single focal point for all the data and the information that is provided and produced by these various activities. And of course, there's a policy link, which is the EU soil strategy that was already presented, and possibly also the soil health law. We will hear more later on. But don't forget, there are many other EU policies that are relevant to soils. Probably the one best known is the Common Agricultural Policy, but many others. And finally, let me say that we learned that it's very important to have stakeholders' involvement from the very beginning. So for us, very important is the European Soil Forum. We just had last week the second meeting of the EU Soil Observatory Forum, where we invite everybody to participate so that it's an open forum where we can exchange and discuss the data and the monitoring systems that we have in place in the EU, and so that it becomes a very transparent and a very participatory system so that everybody knows where these data are coming from. But the history told us that all this has been difficult in the beginning. Here you see a request, the beginning of all this was when many years ago we tried a different approach. At that time, we were still convinced that member states could provide us with the necessary data in a harmonized way. This is what we received in 2014 when we asked about soil erosion in the EU. Only very few member states provided the data, only very, sometimes even partially, not all, covering the entire nation. So as you see, this was the beginning of the thinking within our services of the need to have a harmonized monitoring system. And the harmonized monitoring system that we use right now is called Lucas Soil. It's based on a land use land cover area survey that we already had in place before, which was called Lucas, which is essentially a 2 by 2 kilometer grid all over the EU. This makes up roughly 1,100,000 points on which surveyors go and make observations. Out of these 1,100,000 points, we usually make a stratification of 250,000 points, on which then just 10% are sampled. So there is somebody going in the field, taking a soil sample in a very documented and very highly accurate way, and all these samples then get sent to one single laboratory, for the simple reason that if you give to 10 laboratories in Europe a soil sample and ask for pH, you will get 10 different values, because unfortunately still inter-laboratory calibration has shown that we have still huge differences in laboratory performance. So one single laboratory allows us then to have a very harmonized and highly accurate image of what is going on European soils. And this has been already repeated starting in 2009, in 2015, 2018, and right now we have our surveys going out for the 2022 survey, so that we will be able to have a regular update of what is going on soils in the EU. Now, what is going on, it depends also on what you measure. And so here you can see what currently gets measured in this survey. It's essentially being expanded slowly to all the needs coming from different questions. For example, recently we introduced also the measuring fungicides, measuring herbicides, antibiotics, soil biodiversity is an emerging topic. And all of this data, of course, you get point information that can then be interpolated to produce maps. That's what you just see here. So you see organic carbon, copper, phosphorus, nitrogen. Of course, in the short time available, I cannot go into full detail, but I want to point out that it's not enough for some of the processes to have this data. You need to combine this data in a model with more complex assessments. This is, for example, the operational assessment we do currently for the erosion issues. Soil erosion is still a major problem in the EU. And if you want to address soil erosion, this needs to be done combining different data together, so that you get at the end something like this, which is a map showing you the distribution of soil loss rates across the EU. So here you can see essentially the erosion rates that we estimate for the various parts of the EU. And of course, we have roughly a soil loss of 2.5 tons per hectare per year. So here the question comes, what is tolerable erosion? And in OECD, we have agreed that we would have a tolerable erosion rate below 10 tons per hectare per year. So everything above 10 tons or 11 tons per hectare per year is considered severe erosion. Usually these data are not very helpful if they don't get aggregated at an administrative level. So what you typically use are indicators of this kind, where you will have aggregation of the data at administrative level, for example, here at NUTS 3 level, which means that you can then take action at administrative level in these areas. I don't go into details because time is short, but here what you see is essentially that you have a serious erosion problem, particularly in the Mediterranean area, which is well known due to the very weak protection of soils and the very high incidence of very intense rainfall events. Now, all this will be in the observatory reported in a dashboard so that each of you can then freely access all this and make this in relation to the various policies that are relevant to soil management. And also have a constant monitoring if policies are actually improving the situation or things are going not that well. So let me conclude saying that soil erosion as an example is just one example. To reverse the situation, you need to introduce different measures and different techniques that will allow you to have a reversal of the situation. So monitoring also management practices, monitoring also what is done on the field, this is crucial and important. And erosion of course gets then is also important in combination with other threats. And I again don't have the time to go into details, but if you combine your erosion model with a sort of organic carbon model, then you can also model how organic carbon gets lost by soil erosion, and you can also model how you can build up the soil organic carbon again by changing land use practices. So all this is freely available. You can access all this on our EU and our European Soil Data Center. I don't go into all the details. You can download all this data. The European Soil Data Center is already existing since nearly 20 years. It's 15 years of operation. You can download all the data for free and are freely available to all of you. We also have a newsletter that you can receive every month if you subscribe. You can download all our series of atlases, and you can download all our data for further reading. So having said this, let me get to the conclusions because I know the time is short. Please, I think that you already mentioned what we produced already in support of this soil mission. And indeed, this is what by now is well established, that we have a high degree of degradation in Europe of 60 to 70% of soils in Europe, which are affected by some process of degradation. As I said in the beginning, this is due to the long history of European agriculture, but also, of course, of other industrial activities. What is important is that all these degradation processes have a cost. And this cost is estimated in around 50 billion euros per year. But we are now working on a more accurate estimate. And the first results tell us, for example, just to mention erosion, that the productivity loss due to water erosion can be estimated in roughly 1.225 billion euros per year. That the management of contaminated soils in the EU can be estimated to be roughly a cost of 6.5 billion euros per year. But we have a direct cost by many electricity companies, for example, or other actors that need to remove sediments from river dams and ports, which is roughly costing between 1.5 and 2.3 billion euros per year. We lose phosphorus due to erosion to the sea, which of course has a cost. And this also is an estimate that we have done. We lose carbon, and we lose carbon not only because we have land use change, we also lose carbon because we have, as I said, erosion rates, which are very important still. So in a nutshell, this is what I want to just very quickly present to you. I know time is short. I think you wanted to know from me a question, if I remember well, but I give you back the floor.
Thank you. I have to apologize for the quality of sound and also for the image, which was not very clear at the top. In any case, I want to thank very much Luca Montanarella because having a monitoring system and an observatory on the soil is the starting point to change the path. So I feel that, without monitoring, we don't have any chance to accelerate the change and also to measure the quality of measures, because we don't know not to know. And therefore, what we are applying in terms of European and national measures to counteract the problem, it not necessarily is the right one. So having monitoring systems in place means that you can change the path. So thank you so much for your contribution. And now I'm very pleased to welcome Andrea Vettori, Duty Head of Unit of Natural Capital, Land Use and Management of DG ENVI. He has been part of the team who prepared and conducted the negotiations of the 7th European Environmental Action Programme. In the same DG, he worked also on strategic planning and the policy coordination on resource efficiency and on an environmental program for small and medium-sized enterprises. Before joining the European Commission, he worked in the European Parliament and for the European Civil Society Organization. It's Andrea Vettori. What is Europe doing to protect soil biodiversity? Thank you for your participation. And then if you also can contribute at the end of your speech with one suggestion that we can make immediately in order to change the path. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Catia, and I hope you can hear me and see me well. It's
perfectly.
Really...
I have to say now it's better, Thank you.
Very good. I'm very happy to be here, but I'm very sad not to be able to be with you physically in Ecomondo. But unfortunately, the intense work for the finalization of the impact assessment of the new soil health law is really putting a lot of pressure on us, and so I was unable to travel to Ecomondo today. But it's very good that I can still participate in this very important event, and I'm very happy to follow the presentation by Luca from the JRC. And,
sorry, Mr. Vettori, if you could put in a presentation mode because we cannot see you on the screen here.
Okay, let me see what I can do. In principle here, it appears correctly. Let me see.
Just a moment.
Yeah, just 1 second, sorry.
I'll try to see with the technical people what is happening. The technical services should be better, I have to say. We will tell to Ecomondo that, we need to do something more. It happened just for a while and then disappeared again.
Okay, I haven't touched anything, so.
Are you sharing your? Okay,
no,
yeah,
it's
now
okay.
It's good. Okay,
it's okay. Thank you.
Very good.
Sorry.
So just to say again that I'm happy to follow Luca and the colleague Lucrezia from the FAO, because I will try to focus really on the solution, on the answer that the European Commission is working on. As you know, the soil is a key element of different strands of work under the European Green Deal. It's key, of course, for protecting nature and biodiversity, not only because it hosts a large part of biodiversity, but also supports biodiversity above ground. It's key for the farm to fork, So for the sustainability of the food system, without healthy soil, we don't have healthy food, as the colleague from the FAO has explained. It's key for climate change mitigation and adaptation. It hosts, it is the largest carbon sink on the terrestrial side, but also is absolutely crucial for adaptation to climate change. And of course, it's part of the solution to the zero pollution challenge, because we know how contaminated soils and have an impact on human health through air pollution, through water pollution, and through contaminating the food chain. There's a recognition of all these, as you can see here from some declaration from the President von der Leyen and from Commissioner Sienkiewicz in charge of the environment, that soil is a solution for the multiple crises we're facing. Although it's always a little bit, as we heard also from the previous speaker, a little bit the Cinderella of the environmental policy, because you know, it's under our feet, it's hidden. Since we were children, we were told that soil is something dirty that we can get rid of. So it's not so evident to bring it back to the top of the political agenda, but a lot of things have changed in the recent years, as we heard also from the moderators related to the bioeconomy and the role of soil in it. Soil degradation in the EU continues. I can skip this in the sake of time, because Luca already presented a lot of data, and it's not only an environmental issue, it's an issue of cost. It's a big cost for the economy, it's a big cost for agriculture production, and therefore we need to address it. There's also a strong public opinion and stakeholder support for higher and strengthened action at EU level. These are the results of the public consultation we ran last year in preparation of the new soil strategy, and you see how strong is the concern of people and how strong is the support to action at European level on soil protection. This is a picture that Luca already mentioned, the EU soil strategy that the Commission adopted in November last year. So we're almost celebrating 1 year of existence of this strategy, is closely linked with a number of other strategies and action plans, is on zero pollution, on climate change, on the chemicals, because at the end, the soil is the end environmental mean that hosts a lot of pollution that comes from elsewhere. So it's absolutely essential to reduce pollution at source if we want to avoid that it ends up in our soil as in our water. But it's also linked to the forest strategy, because forests cover 40% of the EU territory, and the health of forest soils is very, very important for climate mitigation and adaptation. Just to give you some examples. The approach at European level on soil protection and sustainable use is on 3 major axes. Healthy soils are a solution for the biodiversity crisis. We'll soon meet in the COP of the Convention of Biological Diversity at the global level in Montreal, and soil and the sustainable management of soil will be part of the discussions of our global agreement on biodiversity, precisely because land degradation and soil degradation are key to address if we want to halt and reverse biodiversity loss. Healthy soils, as I said, are crucial to fight pollution, and they are a key element of the circular economy. There are a lot of soils that are excavated, that are polluted and need to be treated, and a lot of them that are clean and healthy soil that should be recycled instead of being put in a landfill. So we're working on these elements, on how to decontaminate contaminated site, recycle brownfield and industrial sites that are not in use anymore for new buildings, new uses, to avoid the use and sealing of virgin soil, be it agricultural soil or natural areas. And finally, healthy soils are a solution to fight and adapt to climate change. As I said, they store carbon, and therefore the protection of soil and their carbon is essential in order to avoid further emissions, and they are absolutely essential for climate change adaptation. The new soil strategy addresses these issues, as you can see at the beginning. It also highlights the water-soil nexus. We always talk in Italy about the hydrogeological vulnerability that Italy is suffering. The link between healthy soil and the avoidance of floods and dramatic consequences is very, very important. So we need to work more on coordinating policy and action between the water cycle and the protection of healthy soils. We need to make, as the FAO has said, sustainable soil management the new normal. It's not possible to have continuous soil degradation. And this is to prevent further desertification, further degradation, prevent pollution. And at the same time, we need also to work to restore degraded soil and remediate contaminated sites. There are a lot of business opportunities on this. European companies are the leaders in these technologies that then can be exported also in other parts of the world. And as my colleague from the JRC has highlighted, we need to improve knowledge, monitoring, and research on soil. The soil mission is certainly contributing, but we need a framework at European level to have solid and robust monitoring in order to take action as soon as possible. And finally, of course, we need to mobilize funding, including private finance. The EU taxonomy is helping on this to channel private and public funds on soil restoration. And we need an engagement by stakeholders and the public at large. And for this, we need to continue to work on soil literacy and information and awareness. Just one slide on, in particular, on the role of healthy soil for the water cycle, for the nutrient cycle, and prevent water pollution and eutrophication, and to adapt to climate change. This is very, very, very important. As we know very well, there's a need to have soil sustainable management and very much nature-based solutions with tree planting, appropriate agricultural practices that don't leave bare soils, that we have stone walls, hedges, landscape features that help keeping healthy soils in agricultural land, avoid erosion and runoff, and avoid downstream, of course, the terrible floods that are more and more risky and possible due to climate change. So just here a few actions from the soil strategy, working really on the different elements that I just mentioned. We need to work very much with member states, with national, regional, and local authorities, but also with the private sector, with the academia, with stakeholders, in order to translate these actions into concrete changes on the ground with progress in terms of research, in terms of practices, We need really to make soil sustainable management the standard practice in the agricultural sectors. It needs to become the standard practice by land use planner, and often decisions on land use are taken at very local level, at municipal level. So there's a lot of work to be done really with cities, municipalities, provincial, regional authorities in order to make soil sustainable management the standard practice. As I said at the beginning, we're working very hard now on a new soil health law that the Commission committed to adopt in spring next year. Here you see the main pillar of this. First of all, the idea is to have a clear set of definitions at European level in order to achieve the objective set in the strategy of healthy soils by 2050. We need to have a stable monitoring and assessment system for soil. We need to have provisions on sustainable use of soils. We need to have basic obligations to identify and remediate contaminated sites. And of course, we need a robust governance system with public authorities at national, regional, and local level to address soil protection and sustainable use. This is, of course, very much based, will be very much based on subsidiarity, because, of course, the solutions on the ground needs to be very local, and the situation on the ground and the challenges might be different in Malta or in Finland. But at the same time, it's absolutely needed to fill the gap that it currently exists of a lack of a common set of definitions, of rules at European level that can set the baseline for appropriate action at a national and regional level. And of course, a future soil health law will be able also to channel additional funds in the new financial perspective once the new law will be in place, because it will provide a baseline and the obligations for national, regional, and local authorities to invest in soil restoration and remediation. And of course, the work it will be complementary to the nature restoration law that the Commission proposed in June, that is currently under discussion in the Parliament and in the Council, where there are a number of obligations to restore degraded ecosystems, again, for climate change and biodiversity. I stop here. Here you have the link where you can find information at European level of what is going on. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Andrea Vettori, for your very clear, very interesting presentation. You have underlined the interconnections. First of all, you underlined, I like the Cinderella role of soil, and also in the lack of knowledge of this aspect, as well as the importance of the soil health law, which will be instrumental in establishing rules that favor the sustainable use and restoration of soil. Now, soil health and soil regeneration also have implications for the common agricultural policy. We will discuss this with Alessandro Apolito, head of technical department at Coldiretti, the largest farmers association in Italy and I think Europe. Before entering Coldiretti, Mr. Apolito worked at the Ministry for Agriculture with the task of ensuring the elaboration and coordination of sectorial supply chain and district development policy lines. Alessandro Apolito, what are the innovation guidelines of the common agricultural policy today? Thank you for your participation. I see you. Thank you.
Thank you, Katia. I will continue in Italian my speech. Vi ringrazio per l'invito. Certamente non so se si vede il video perché mi dice che non.
I don't know whether you can see my video. Can you see me at least? We see you, but
Mi dice che è impossibile avviare il video dato che è stato interrotto dall'organizzatore.
Mi spiace molto per questi problemi tecnici.
I apologize for technical issues.
Ok, eccomi qua.
Ok, eccolo qua.
You can see me now, I think. Thank you, Katia. I'd like to stress that we are in keeping with what was just illustrated as to policies to manage and preserve quality of soils. Today, I'm going to discuss policy innovations. You know, the common agricultural policy is one of the pillars to ensure food security in Europe. This is a cornerstone of treaties. And we have a high responsibility. Farmers have to ensure sufficient and safe food to millions of Europeans. As we saw this morning, you know, conferences like this help us build better policies, and better policies help us achieve goals we set. The key words over the years is transition. Digital, green, transition of models. And the common agricultural policy is part of the tools. For the first time, we see a close integration, but we have to stress that there is a negative side to it. Sometimes, because of misconceptions, measures that are put into place are hard to implement, and the set objectives don't consider a possible transition. Transition to us means taking companies that today are active and taking them to becoming more sustainable in 2030. If that is the horizon, we have to do it. I think that part of the job is to compare where we are to where the rest of the world is. We have to consider the fundamental reciprocity principle, because this has to do with the quality of all that is done to protect soil. If we think we can transform Europe in a huge garden and then import from countries that don't honor our environmental standards, that would be a defeat and a short-term, medium-term, and long-term. I would like to start off from your question. What can we do? Well, we have to invest on soil, because protecting soil means protecting farmers, and protecting farmers equals protecting soil, because if there are no farmers, there are no good soils or healthy soils. And this is what we are doing as Coldiretti alongside Novamont in order to invest in circularity. We're trying to facilitate a transition. And you cannot facilitate transition if you do not have alternative tools, pelargonic acid rather than herbicides, or biodegradable mulching, and thanks to which some practices become virtuous and help us protect the soil. The new policy, agricultural policy, has some key goals. For the first time, some conditionalities are introduced. You're not allocated funds if some criteria are not met, and the purpose is to protect the soil. First, the aim is to reduce the potential risk of soil. Second, to ensure soil coverage during those stages of the year when leaving the soil bare is risky and would compromise the fertility of the soil itself. Third point is connected to a crop rotation. Beyond that, there are two major actions in the first pillar of direct payments, and this is the key novelty in the new policies, the eco schemes that pay farmers in case of environmental actions, in particular using multi-annual cover crops and extensive fodder systems and bee attracting crops. They will help improve soil fertility. And then there are some environmental and agri-meteorological payments, the investment of €1 billion per year on organic farmer. All these tools, all these facilities will show that farmers want to be in the front line to protect the soil, because that's the first tool to work. A farmer with no fertile soil is less competitive and with no future. I'd like to conclude by saying something following previous speakers. I think that management of data on soil quality must be part of public policy planning relating to support to agriculture. Today, we can take actions favoring precision agriculture and modeling our actions per company, per farm. What we have to do for transition is to change our approach to policies, how we build policies for farmers. Today, we need infrastructures that make farms competitive on the market. If, through the use of data, are able to improve policies, we would have made a major leap forward. The common agricultural policy that will accompany us till 2027 and up to 2030 was written in 2017. In 2017, there was no pandemic, there was no energy shocks, there was no war, there was no such a flow of data available today on soil quality. And so, we, by contrast, need policy adaptation measures. Farms cannot wait for more.
Thank you so much, Alessandro, for your speech, because you touched the very important elements, like the problem of transition, because it's not easy, the transition. You cannot destroy everything you have for a new system without having a bridge. And then the question of how to make policies which have to be interconnected. I stressed this element at the beginning of my presentation. It's very important, the interconnection among different sectors. It is important also that the policies are not silos, logic, and top-down. They have to be considered on the basis of the diversity of territories, which is very important. So I think you touched the very important elements. And I think that you now open to another element, which is the last topic of carbon farming. I feel that carbon farming is a very, very relevant element on the logic of soil health. We all know that soil plays a key role in capturing carbon from the atmosphere, as has been also touched by many speakers today, thanks to the carbon sink. As Ursula von der Leyen reminded us, by 2050, the EU wants to become climate neutral, with the goal of reducing carbon dioxide level by 55% compared to 1990 level already by 2030. To achieve this, it will have to absorb some 310 million tons of CO2 by 2030. We understand that farmers will have to play a leading role towards this goal. Today we have as a guest Sofia Lilli, agronomist and researcher at the University of Perugia. Welcome, Professor Lilli, how to implement carbon farming in the EU. This is a very relevant element. By the way, we are so pleased that Mrs. D'Aprile is with us. So after Mrs. Lilli, then I will leave Mrs. D'Aprile to conclude this part of the day. Okay.
Good morning, everyone.
For being here. Thank you.
Moment, please. Buongiorno a tutti, come appunto già detto sono un assegnista di ricerca presso l'Università degli Studi di Perugia, dove lavoro.
I am a PhD student at the University of Perugia working on carbon farming, and we want to see how to implement such a sector, such an issue at a European level. As already said over and over again during the day, soil plays a fundamental role for life, also to meet the most important challenges of our century, mitigating climate change, creating circulating systems, and protecting biodiversity. Today, though, I would like to speak about the role played by the soil for adapting and mitigating climate change in order to reach climate neutrality. And these practices can reduce man-made emissions, but also reabsorb and sequestrate carbon in soils, as already heard. And this potential at the European level, starting from the strategy for soil of 2030, is estimated between 11 to 38 million tons equivalent of CO2 in Europe every year. What does it mean? What is carbon farming? Well, what is carbon sequestration? It concerns all the pools of carbon through soils, forests, and animal husbandry. And so the aim is to absorb, reduce CO2 emissions, as well as methane and other GHG emissions, like nitrous oxide and methane and carbon dioxide. It doesn't just include carbon dioxide, but other types of gases that also contribute to a greater extent also to the warming of our planet. So we shouldn't just reduce, but also avoid emissions, greenhouse effect gas emissions. Even before Green Deal, EU committed itself to reducing carbon. And the Green Deal is a turning point, and a set of reports have been published that had put carbon farming at the center of EU policies. Let's have a look at them. As already said, the Green Deal has recognized that the CO2 reducing practices should be compensated. How? Through CAP, the Common Agricultural Policy, and also through the private market. And that is why there are so-called private initiatives. So farm to fork and the circular economy initiatives are related to carbon farming in Europe. Carbon farming to be seen as a new type of service, providing new source of income to farmers, and at the same time contribute to decarbonization. Europe, since 2009, has carried out many studies on carbon farming, and a handbook, a report was published because it addresses all the various issues to be taken into account to implement these practices in Europe. The Fit for 55% strategy established important goals, getting to 310 million tons of CO2 to be captured by natural sinks of CO2, and also introducing two new regulations to share efforts, and the AFC directive. A central role is played by communication from the Commission to the European Parliament and Council concerning sustainable carbon cycles through the sequestration of carbon in soil and promoting sustainable cycles, carbon cycles, so reducing fossil carbon use, increasing carbon removal, and promoting recycling and reuse of carbon. In addition to that, we will have a report to be published by the end of 2022, a certification system for carbon removal. This communication defines the carbon farming as a green business model, rewarding all the ones who implement practices able to reduce emissions and to increase the carbon stocks in soils. How? Through the so-called carbon credit market. So, as the communication states, farmers are supposed to sell not just produce, agricultural produce and biomass, but also credits to those who want to reduce their carbon footprint. It should be highlighted that all the other sectors can reduce emissions or are responsible for CO2 emissions, whereas farmers can be responsible for emissions, but also for carbon removal and absorption. And that is why we talk about carbon farming and at the EU level. And so these are the various highlights within this communication: reducing tilling and of soil, the various types of procedures that are harmful, and reforestation within the same ecosystem to create a balance, or the use of a cover crop and other types of rotational crops. The communication also illustrates the possible funds for carbon farming to understand how to encourage it. Schemes will be published based on carbon credit market, but further funds will be available to provide incentives like CAP, as already said, as well as other funds, but cohesion, policy and life projects, in addition to public national funds. Yet a few challenges still remain to be addressed to implement carbon farming. First and foremost, the cost to get to agricultural practices that are greener, different from the present ones, and also the uncertainty of revenue opportunities, because increasing organic matter in soils is not easy. The soil takes time to respond. It takes efforts, knowledge. And a further element to be highlighted is to disseminate knowledge on how to implement carbon farming and contents of organic content in soils. Then there are various methodologies to be implemented that might lead to poor reliability of these markets, of how these rules play in the voluntary carbon management markets, and then monitoring, data collection. How can we make sure how much carbon is removed and to what extent have CO2 emissions been reduced? And that is why monitoring assessment systems are therefore developed in order to have reliable certification systems. Even though challenges are there, the benefits are so important that they offset challenges because they lead to more fertile soils, which is of course important, even if we consider the input that a soil requires, because a more fertile soil requires less nutrition by preserving biodiversity, with all the various consequences on resilience and carbon and climate change, a better water retention capacity of soils, reduction of soil erosion, and the benefits for farmers and more biodiversity. And as Dr. Ippolito said, we should preserve soils to protect farmers and vice versa. So these are the benefits. And in spite of challenges, that is why we are working hard to make sure that these new practices are implemented, apart from the carbon neutrality goal, because more fertile soils are healthier and they are more productive, and that is also good in terms of securing food, in providing food security. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think you touched one point that also from the mission board, Salute in Food, was really central to have really carbon farming at the center, because it's very important for fertility of soil, for maintaining biodiversity, and also for climate change. So it's a win-win system. Of course, is linked to the question of monitoring, which is, without monitoring, but is also opening another concept that is typical of circular bioeconomy. We don't know where we stay. The experiment, the interconnected projects at local level are, labs, open labs, where to learn and then to modify the approach, because we cannot have in this moment a silos approach and top-down systems without having a monitoring system that helps. So it's a way to experiment also in the policy logic, how to face this new type of paradigm, where we have to learn. Learning by doing is the way we need absolutely to create. Thank you so much. I'm so pleased. I'm so glad that to have here the representative of Ministry of Environment and Energy Security now, and I'm very honored that Mrs. D'Aprile is part of this conference, and the Ministry wanted to be part of Soil Health Official Convention today. And Mrs. D'Aprile is head of the Sustainable Development Department, which is responsible for the circular economy, sustainable use of land and water resources, environmental assessment, air pollution, and physical and electromagnetic pollution. This is very important. So it's really at the center of what we are discussing today. So the floor is yours. Thank you for being here
today. Thank you very much, and good afternoon. I will speak in Italian, so we can follow the previous speakers. Allora, dunque, innanzitutto io vorrei ringraziare.
I'd like to thank the Soil Foundation and Ms. Bastioli for organizing this event focusing on soil, because soil is generally a neglected topic and not very appealing to non-experts against the current background when the pandemic emergency and the energy shocks and last but not least drought we have experienced and that we are experiencing attract more of the attention or most of the attention. Sectors that seem far from the soil. The need to include soil in sectorial issues is a need that is envisioned at the community level and that was transposed nationally. After COVID-19 pandemic and so-called Marshall Plan, that is the Recovery and Resilience Facility, have we tried to strengthen topics relating to soil within the sectorial policies. First of all, we identified an opportunity. We identified something which is more strategic than investments allowed by the plan. It is reforms supporting investment. We tried to include soil across the board in all structure reforms envisioned by the Resilience and Recovery Plan. In circular economy, Italy in June this year was given a strategy, and it has some specific goals for our country. We are the first in Europe to include, to consider circular economy as a new model of consumption to reduce waste and better manage waste and includes bioeconomy. The National Committee on Bioeconomy, I'd like to thank Professor Fava for his constant support and coordination provided to the Ministry of the Environment. So for the first time, circular economy and bioeconomy walk hand in hand. They have the same guidance, they share the same goals, which are short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals, because the strategy plans activities from today to 2035. Within the circular economy strategy, there are all the themes developed within bioeconomic clusters at the presidency of the Council of Ministers. And there is also an integration of sectoral policies for water and soil that has never been included in such an overall planning effort. And I go back to what Mrs. Bastioli said earlier on. She stressed the need for planning in order to promote sectoral policies. We now have a holistic approach. The strategy was also revised because the national strategy for circular economy relies on an observatory that is going to gradually integrate and update the findings and the goals that are currently set by the strategy. How? Well, the observatory for the strategy is an institutional think tank involving all the ministries to ensure consistency in the policies developed by the Ministry of the Environment, the Ministry of Agricultural Policies, the Ministry of Economic Development and Infrastructures. All these ministries will work together to achieve the goals set in the strategy. It's the first time that such a governance is proposed. There is a common vision, there is a common planning of goals. And this platform will integrate guidance for future investments. Often in Italy, resources are there to develop ideas and turn them into action. What is missing is unanimous and common action, and resources are scattered. We have often channeled resources along projects that yielded no outcomes. Resources were not tapped into. These are community funds that go wasted, that are not properly used. So we have this governance body available now. In order to develop activities on various topics, we do need to ensure constant dialogue with the various sectoral stakeholders, and by that I not simply mean public institutions, but also universities, private companies, research centers. We need a synergy between governmental bodies and sectoral stakeholders. That's the only way to promote better projects. In the strategy for circular economy, we added a number of provisions and measures for water. Among the deadlines, by the end of this year, there is a package of proposals to reuse water resources and help the farming sector. That is the first user of water resources. We added some streamlining measures to set up desalination installations.
Attenzione perché il caso energia fa un po' scuola, così come
as we learned from the energy field, the diversification of resources and sources is key. We need to diversify water supply sources, maximizing processes. So use of water, desalination, desalting, setting up the observatory for soil desertification Last but not least, which is closely connected to soil management, strengthening of governance of district authorities. Why did we do that? Because district authorities thanks to their geographic scale, can help optimize planning in terms of use of water resources and in terms of soil use and use. District authorities, once strengthened and well-structured through a governance that turns all that which is voluntary into mandatory, helps us to move ahead. District authority will have the ability to gather information, because whenever we don't have data, we cannot move forward. As Mrs. Bastioli just said, if we don't have data, if we don't have this constant integration, adjustment of assessments, we cannot plan properly. District authorities will become the place to better apply soil and water management policies. We had a discussion with Minister Cingolani as to the need to group in a single structure sustainable use of land and water resources, so that including reclamation, soil regeneration and water reclamation, in order to have a common vision of the sector. As all experts know, this is a single sector that was clusterized and that didn't help in planning. Some other short-term actions included in the National Strategy for Circular Economy concern soil regeneration, reclamation of contaminated sites, streamlining reclamation processes for industrialization, and renewable source installations in order to reduce land use. If we don't step up procedures to convert contaminated industrial sites into sites that can be used for different purposes, for energy purposes or other, we would not be able to bridge the gaps. And also farming use of land. Whenever plans are set up on farming land, there are confrontations between with the farmers. We are developing these ideas and these projects within an international cooperation framework. We would like to learn from other countries some advanced technologies for precision farming, to reuse water, to desalt with modern installations, lowering energy consumption. Because the problem of these plants is that they use up a lot of energy. But there are some technologies that help us to cut energy consumption. In a country like ours that is surrounded by the sea, there are other ways, other options. In a country like ours, where the water supply system is not that efficient, we cannot do without desalting plants. It would be a paradox to disregard this source of supply. This is to say, basically, that the idea is to open up to technological innovation, collection of data and information. We don't have much about soil, use of advanced technologies, and National Plan for Resilience and Recovery helps us. There is a 500 million euro measure to monitor the territory. That will also include land use and quality features of the soil. So basically, we will be using data, we'll get to know better technologies, governance, rationalization of governance in land use and water use through district authorities, streamlining of procedures for any initiatives, any activities which are urgent and can contribute to diversifying water supply through desalting plants. Acceleration of reclamation. This is the overall strategy. We will be working closely with the other ministries to develop the policies that I've mentioned briefly.
Ringrazio sentitamente la dottoressa D'Aprile per questa assoluta panoramica.
Thank you, Mrs. D'Aprile, for the overview of what is going on in our new ministry. And there are new aspects of our ministry that is renamed as Environment and Energy Security, and cross-fertilization is important too. It is an excellent platform. And I think that that allows us to think of new integrations. Remember the connection between electrical grids and the site reclamation or land reclamation institutes, and so having energy basins with water conservation measures with one single cost for two fundamental infrastructures for our country, that is absolutely important. So there are big potentials of that.
Circular bioeconomy means territorial regeneration, means soil health at the core, means interconnection among different sectors. And so this is not just to take care of the problems, but also a platform where to relaunch the opportunities. And this is the great thing we can do. Italy has a lot of problems, but is also at the front of bioeconomy. So I think that really we, together with farmers, together with composters, together with So transforming problems in big opportunities is a reality today, and we need to really be fast. And of course, the policies are so important, intermingled with what we are doing. So Italy can be a platform of experimentation for Europe bioeconomy, and this is the great challenge we have and the great message we would like to launch from this conference today, how really to transform problems in real opportunities where we can act today, having in mind, as I think Polito said, we have a period of times which are shorter and shorter. The situation is changing dramatically every year here. It's not anymore as in the past. So we need to be flexible, reactive, and then we really work and on cooperation of innovation, of innovative platform, participative innovation. So it's a trust of people. And this is very difficult because the period is in reality a lot of egos instead of eco. But this is a great opportunity to really change our country in starting from made in Italy, starting from biodiversity, special specificity of the territories, and to have big laboratories and lighthouses along our country. So thank you so much. We took a lot of time from Roberto Moncalvo. So thanking all of you once again for the high level of the contributions. I leave you in Roberto's Moncalvo capable hands, who will moderate the panel of this international morning section. Roberto Moncalvo is president of Coldiretti Piemonte and among the founders of the Soil Foundation. Thank you, Roberto. And I think your section will explain what is feasible. So it's the real heart of what we have to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Catia. Good morning to everybody. We are a bit late in our agenda of the morning, so I will very fastly introduce this second session. We will move from the soil in the European policy framework and in the international agenda. We move from this topic, we move to agriculture. We move to research and innovation in agriculture, and we will talk about, with our panelists, we will talk about best practice and challenges in agriculture and in research and innovation. So we will move from policy to real projects and activities that we can see in the territories also nowadays. We will have 4 panelists in this second part of the international session of the States Generals of Soil Health. And we begin with Pedro Berliner. Thank you to Pedro Berliner to be physically also with us today. Pedro Berliner is the Emeritus Full Professor at the French Associates Institute for Agriculture and Biotechnology of Drylands. Pedro Berliner's main research interest is in the efficient use of water in rain-fed dryland agriculture and the dryland afforestation in particular. He has studied and developed, together with more than 30 of his graduate students, the techniques that make use of flood waters for the irrigation of orchards and forests planted in arid zones, with a focus on the evaporation of water from the surface of bare soils between the rows of crops. So I would like to thank to Pedro Berliner and give you the floor for your 5 minutes intervention.
Okay.
First intervention.
Thank you very much. I would like to use the opportunity to thank the organizers for inviting me to this really incredibly interesting meeting. Actually, and as you mentioned, I come from Israel, so I will not talk anything that is directly related to Italy, but some of the ways we have tackled some of the problems we had. I think that the previous talkers mentioned very clearly all the important functions of soil. I think they probably didn't leave out any of them. But I think that even though it was mentioned by the representative from the Italian government, there's one issue which was in a sense left out, that a healthy soil, which is dry, doesn't help us at all. It doesn't capture carbon, it doesn't do anything, it doesn't produce. So in order to have, in order to make this healthy soil effective, this one, yes. What we need is the soil to be wet. A dry soil, again, I want to emphasize this, doesn't help us at all. And if I would like to be a bit more specific, I would like to say that we will need also warm soil. Cold soil also does not help us in microbial activity. The next slide I want to show is some, I'm sure that you're all familiar with this. This is the drought during the last summer in Europe. And why do I bring it? Because when it is dry, all the activities mentioned by the soil cannot be carried out. It's like a skeleton, which may be healthy, but has no muscles. It doesn't get us any. So we need to have water in order to able to maximize the potential within the soil. And what we have done in Israel is a small country, but the southern half has less than 200 millimeters of rainfall, all in winter, and it was 50% of the country, it is 50% of the country, and we have developed this area. And I thought that it is relevant to this meeting to describe how we have done this without going to too many technical details. Our approach is to increase the water use efficiency. In other words, the yield per total water use. This is our main goal, has been our main goal for the last 70 years. And we adopted a two-pronged approach. On the one hand, we increased the water production, how much water we have. The rainfall is very small. Most of you know that there are no big rivers. The Jordan may have religious importance, but in terms of water, it is negligible. And we need more water. And the other hand is how to increase the efficiency with which we use water at farm level. So the first one is what sources of water do we have? Well, we've got rainfall, which can be used directly, but again, it's very little. We've got our aquifers and reservoirs. We are now, to give you an idea, we are pumping from depth of 1.5 kilometers in order to obtain water. This pumping is expensive in terms of energy, but we've got no alternative. We have got, I think, our major source of water, and I think this is very important to state, is wastewater. Wastewater is usually not used. Israel purifies 85% of the wastewater. Then a country, the European country that comes closest to us is Spain, and they are using 15%. This 85% is a source also of nutrients when you clean the water, particularly nitrogen and phosphorus, which means that we can use this for fertilizer. The recycled wastewater it makes up of 50% of water for irrigation of agricultural soils. I would say that this is our gold mine. And the next one is, again, it was also mentioned by the representative of the government, Ms. D'Aprile, brackish water and seawater, which come together and have to be desalinized by reverse osmosis. Israel will be in the next 2 or 3 years, with the completion of the plans, all of the domestic water use for Israel will be supplied from desalinated water. Obviously, this creates demands for energy, and they're cost intensive, but this allows us to have a continuous supply of water in order to carry out all our activities. We now are, the wastewater is not only filtered, but is going to be treated by reverse osmosis in order to minimize the amount of pollutants which can reach the aquifers. Here, I think I have to say something which is very important, and we managed what we call to green the desert and to establish an efficient agriculture system, because water is a national resource in Israel. It is managed by the government. It's not managed by the individual, not by individual councils. The government has agencies which decide how much water anybody can pump. It decides the pricing, and it decides the distribution of water. Without this, we wouldn't have been able to be at the site where now with youth water. And the water from the various sources, be this desalination, from aquifer, overland dams, and so on, is merged into one distribution system throughout the whole of the country. Actually, when I open my tap, I don't know where the water is coming from, but I'm paying the same amount for my cubic meter of water if I'm living in the desert or close to the source of the water. This is, again, a very important topic in order to be able to use your resources safely. Here we see a system of distribution which comes from the north of Lake Kinneret, which is close where Jesus walked on the water, to the south of the desert, and where we have all our distribution, national distribution system by a national carrier. And the various desalination centers and so on, water is merged into this system. This is on a general basis. When we look at what happens with water, which comes from rainfall or irrigation, we want to minimize losses in the field. The biggest loss is evaporation and also drainage. Drainage is relatively easy to manage with irrigated system, but we also want to decrease these two losses. In this case, all the water we would apply to the soil would be used for transpiration. This is our ultimate goal in order to obtain the maximum yields per unit. And our irrigation system evolved like everybody else in the world. We started with furrow, moved then to sprinkler irrigation. Again, this was possible on a nationwide basis because water is supplied under pressure to every single point within the state of Israel. From this, we move to center pivots, which are clearly improved version. There are less losses of water during the irrigation. This allows us to irrigate at different times of the year. And last but not least, the famous trickle irrigation, which decreases the unproductive losses. Are we close to solving all our problems? No, there's plenty of scope. And I would like to show you two of our latest technical developments, which I think are of interest. One is in order to decrease evaporation, we cover the soil between the rows. Here it is maize with a mulch, with a polyethylene mulch, which is biodegradable, by the way. What we found is that in a crop, which is irrigated by trickle irrigation, a third of the water is lost by evaporation. This is considered to be a very efficient system. So there's plenty of scope to increase the water use efficiency. And the next one, I'm not sure if you see on top of the banana plantation, you see a net. This net decreases the turbulent fluxes within the crop and decreases the transpiration by 20% of a banana crop, which is a lot of water, but this does not affect the yield of banana. This is another way in which we increase our water use efficiency. So these are, I would say, on the tip of a fork, two of the latest ideas we're using. I am sure that with all the other techniques, you are conversant in Italy as in other parts of the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much,
Grazie, professore. per la sua presentazione. Come ha detto Catia Bastioli prima, il nostro comitato scientifico poi redigerà un documento. Le chiederei in qualche parola di dirci cosa, in base alla sua esperienza, qual è la principale priorità alla quale operare per il futuro. Sarebbe presuntuoso da parte mia dire cosa gli altri devono fare. Sono uno scienziato del suolo, non mi occupo di politiche. Dobbiamo cercare indicatori semplici dello stato di salute del suolo. Non vedo molte persone della mia età in sala, ma una volta che si guarda agli aggregati del suolo e alla stabilità degli stessi, ebbene, questo racchiude tutto quello di cui abbiamo parlato: il contenuto di sostanza organica, la resistenza all'acqua, eccetera. Se potessi dare un consiglio, senza suonare presuntuoso, è che questa analisi degli aggregati andrebbe integrata nella maggior parte dei processi, e questo spiega movimenti idrici del terreno. Grazie ancora a Pedro Berliner, e a questo punto presento il secondo relatore, Bram Meshops. È responsabile di innovazione e ricerca all'IFOAM Organics in Europa. Dovrebbe collegarsi a noi da remoto. Non so se Bram ci sente. Sì, io vi sento, ma non riesco a condividere lo schermo. Qualcosa blocca? Forse se mi potete aiutare da remoto. Proviamo a fare. Adesso funziona, forse? Ah, eccoci qua, ce l'abbiamo fatta. Abbiamo la sua presentazione. Mi vedete? Vedete la presentazione? Sì. Possiamo iniziare con Bram Meshops, manager di ricerca e innovazione all'IFOAM Organics Europe. A lei la parola per i suoi 5 minuti di intervento. Grazie per avermi dato l'opportunità di apportare alcuni elementi al dibattito. Inizierei sottolineando che la salute del terreno e dell'intero ecosistema è fondamentale per il biologico. È proprio in questo che affondiamo le radici. Mantenere sano il suolo è uno degli scopi della nostra associazione. Noi non usiamo fertilizzanti sintetici o pesticidi in agricoltura biologica, ma usiamo le colture di copertura intercalari, usiamo ammendanti, rotazioni colturali e ridotta lavorazione del terreno. Grazie a queste pratiche aumentiamo lo stato di salute del terreno, come dimostrato da diversi studi. Il terreno gestito in modo biologico ha una maggiore quota di sostanza organica, meno perdita di elementi nutritivi, maggiore capacità di trattenere l'acqua, maggiore diversità. E per effetto di questo, terreni gestiti in questa modalità sono più resilienti alla siccità, alle inondazioni, e c'è una grande biodiversità sottoterra, e questo aiuta gli agricoltori a combattere e ad adattarsi al cambiamento climatico. Con la nostra piattaforma abbiamo lanciato un position paper per sottolineare i fabbisogni di ricerca. Posso riassumere il tutto. Innanzitutto l'apporto di elementi nutritivi nel comparto. Noi non usiamo fertilizzanti chimici spesso, però c'è uno squilibrio nutritivo laddove non si può usare concime. La diversificazione va promossa. Noi usiamo composting, usiamo digestati, ricicliamo acque reflue, ma tutto questo va fatto in modo sostenibile e ulteriori ricerche necessarie. Abbiamo bisogno di diversificare le rotazioni culturali anche in sistemi specializzati. Anche nei sistemi in serra abbiamo bisogno di innovare in tal senso. La lavorazione conservativa è cruciale per proteggere la sostanza organica nel terreno e si accompagna a tutta una serie di problemi nella gestione della flora spontanea. Non possiamo usare pesticidi, erbicidi e quindi dobbiamo adottare altre strategie. Ho già detto che abbiamo una maggiore biodiversità, una migliore biologia, ma non capiamo esattamente talvolta cosa succede, soprattutto abbiamo bisogno di ulteriore ricerca di base per capire esattamente cosa accade a livello di terreno. C'è bisogno di lavoro pratico, occorre incoraggiare gli agricoltori ad apprendere nuove tecnologie per sperimentare, incoraggiarli ad adottare nuove pratiche e quindi abbiamo bisogno di un sistema di innovazione, un sistema che chiamiamo AKIS. La ricerca ha bisogno di una serie di priorità nel quadro della missione europea. E adesso promuovo uno studio che abbiamo lanciato appena il mese scorso sui Living Labs e le Lighthouse Farms in Europa. Lo trovate, questo studio, sul sito di TP Organics. Abbiamo, oltre agli esempi, una serie di raccomandazioni, non le esaminerò tutte perché non ne abbiamo il tempo, ma mi piacerebbe sottolineare le ultime due. Vorremmo promuovere una sottorete per il biologico. Living Labs e Lighthouse si occupano di gestione biologica. Sarebbe un grosso passo avanti per il settore del biologico. Quindi adottare pratiche sempre più biologiche non può che aiutare. Penso che serva un lavoro degli ATA, dei servizi ATA, servizi di consulenza in agricoltura. Vorremmo collegare tutti questi servizi di consulenza ben oltre i confini geografici e integrare il tutto nel sistema nazionale o regionale, e questo potrebbe promuovere una adozione su più larga scala dell'agricoltura biologica in Europa. Grazie. Grazie a Bram Mescops per il contributo. Ha chiuso l'intervento con una serie di raccomandazioni, ma anche a lei chiedo di darci una priorità che secondo lei è importante ai fini della rigenerazione del suolo. Per la sintesi odierna, posso rispondere a questa domanda riferendomi agli obiettivi della Commissione nella strategia Farm to Fork, incrementare la quota delle aziende organiche nell'UE, perché l'UE crede nel potenziale del biologico. Dovremmo rendere il nostro sistema sostenibile e proteggere i nostri suoli. Quindi io sottolineo il target europeo e invito tutti a darci una mano a conseguirlo. Grazie. Grazie a Bram. Passiamo a questo punto a David Chiaramonti. David Chiaramonti è qui con noi in presenza ed è professore al Politecnico di Torino, Dipartimento di Energia, è vice rettore degli affari internazionali presso il Politecnico, è a capo del consorzio dell'HND Record ed è anche membro fondatore della fondazione Resoil. A lei la parola, professore. Grazie, è tardi, quindi cercherò di accelerare. Mi incentrerò su cose che forse sono state già dette. Il focus per noi è l'area mediterranea, perché è qui che noi viviamo, ci sono tante problematiche da gestire, i messaggi che lanciamo sono che dobbiamo arrestare il cambiamento climatico. L'ambiente mediterraneo sta vivendo un momento critico. Come vedete a destra, il grafico mostra un'accelerazione violenta. Siamo di fronte a un problema gravissimo. Abbiamo poco documentato ad opera delle diverse agenzie. Quanto è critica la situazione? Abbiamo già mappato milioni di aree marginali definite nella direttiva. Quindi voglio essere chiaro a riguardo. Le aree marginali vanno legalmente definite. Questo è fatto nell'atto delegato, quello che è marginale, quali sono i criteri per definire qualcosa marginale. Quindi non è una questione soltanto scientifica, ma anche giuridica, e questo è necessario per investire e agire di conseguenza. Dobbiamo adottare azioni veloci. Questo è stato già spiegato nel documento della Commissione Clean Planet for All, base della direttiva. Ora stiamo discutendo la terza. Tutte le cose dette stamattina erano già state chiaramente indicate. Sappiamo benissimo che le diverse agenzie europee, sulla base dei dati, ci spiegano la gravità del quadro in questa regione. C'è un calo delle rese, non so se effettivamente è un 50%, ma 30% è già un impatto forte che già stiamo vivendo. Il cambiamento climatico già oggi è una realtà. Quest'anno non c'è stata produzione di riso in Piemonte perché non c'è stata pioggia. È qualcosa di concreto che viviamo nel quotidiano e che colpisce fortemente l'agricoltura. E arrivo al fuoco della mia presentazione. Come fare un business case? Io sono un ingegnere, non sono un agronomo, non sono un chimico del suolo. La mia preoccupazione è come rendere il tutto non soltanto sostenibile sotto il profilo ambientale, ma anche sotto quello sociale e non. Dobbiamo creare un business case. Deve essere a lungo termine. Abbiamo bisogno di un'implementazione su larga scala, si parla di 8,5 milioni di ettari soltanto nella zona europea del Mediterraneo, molte le regioni intaccate, e questo ci porta ancora una volta alle politiche che già ci sono, che andrebbero potenziate. Ritornerò al mercato del carbonio a breve. Ci sono molti progetti che affrontano la questione, che MITE è uno che sto coordinando con l'Imperial College, con una serie di attori di alto profilo. Stiamo cercando di implementare una strategia per aumentare la sostanza organica nel suolo e la riserva di carbonio nel quadro della direttiva rilasciata quest'anno. Al momento stiamo lavorando con un ente di certificazione per sviluppare un altro modello per certificare quello che facciamo. E sono anche fiero di partecipare come partner Bio4A. Come c'è una parte industriale, ma c'è anche una grossa attività di ricerca che stiamo svolgendo, l'abbiamo fatto negli ultimi 4 anni. Qui vedete il caso specifico di camelina, il suolo recuperato con il compost, co-compostato, e questo si collega alla fase attuale. Il prossimo anno avremo, dopo 4 anni di coltivazione, risultati in queste aree test in 2 siti particolarmente aridi della Spagna. Con la JRC potremmo fare una presentazione congiunta degli esiti, e qui il messaggio da portare a casa qual è? Che il recupero, il ripristino del suolo è un caso di reverse silo. Questa terra sarebbe improduttiva. Qui produciamo orzo e anche oleaginose, ovvero camelina, grazie all'intervento sul suolo stesso. Quindi politiche integrate sono essenziali. Ultima mia diapositiva riguarda il mercato del carbonio. Ho sentito stamattina parlare di CAP, del carbon farming. E io ho un punto di vista leggermente diverso. Qui stiamo esplorando altro. Il mercato del carbonio è un mercato punto, quindi c'è l'offerta, c'è la domanda, ci sono volumi e i crediti sono scambiati. Bisogna 100 milioni di tonnellate, adesso siamo a 70, però ci sono tanti schemi di scambio del carbonio. Abbiamo il nostro sistema europeo, ma il sistema neozelandese è diverso. Dobbiamo favorire una integrazione intersettoriale. In Europa e altrove c'è la tendenza a guardare, che è giusto per certi versi, a guardare tra i settori alla riduzione delle emissioni di carbonio. Quindi l'agricoltura lo deve fare, l'industria lo deve fare, eccetera. Ogni comparto separatamente. Oltre a questo, che è indubbiamente necessario, c'è una grossa finestra di opportunità di integrare i vari settori, legarli l'uno all'altro. Non dimentichiamo che ci sarà una grossa richiesta di compensazione anche negli scenari più favorevoli di integrazione delle rinnovabili nel mercato. Comunque ci sarà il fabbisogno di compensazioni nell'aviazione, per esempio. Se sostituiamo interamente il combustibile convenzionale con quello nuovo, avremo un 63% di riduzione della CO2. Comunque ci sarà una quota E questo è l'approccio o lo scenario più irrealistico e ottimistico. Ma per fare tutto questo abbiamo bisogno di partenariati e sono lieto che abbiamo Giovanni De Santis al Politecnico di Torino con un piano ambizioso che si lega ai principali osservatori, e perché qualcosa che va portato all'attenzione degli istituti europei, ed è qualcosa che non dobbiamo guardare nel breve ma nel lungo termine. Dobbiamo portare questo sistema, il mercato del carbonio, avvicinarlo all'attività in agricoltura. C'è il lavoro in corso a Bruxelles, tutti chiedono di includere nei propri schemi ETS altri forum. Quindi penso al carbon farming. Non è facile, non è una cosa che si può fare a breve. Creare un nuovo mercato richiede tempo, richiede risorse e con ogni probabilità ci vorranno anni per svilupparlo. Abbiamo già un mercato presente che potrebbe essere adattato, modulato per rispondere a determinate esigenze. Le soluzioni sono tante, quindi è molto più veloce, no, certo non sto a ricordarvi il bisogno urgente di agire sul pianeta, ma è meglio adattare un sistema di mercato che è già esistente piuttosto che crearlo uno da zero. In conclusione, dovremmo sviluppare dei modelli di business sostenibili non basati sugli incentivi quanto piuttosto su adeguamenti di mercato. L'area del Mediterraneo è il cuore pulsante del programma per certi versi, e questo richiederà, un po' come stanno facendo già negli Stati Uniti, vi devo ricordare che gli americani sono molto pragmatici e stanno mettendo insieme le forze di diversi ministeri, stanno firmando accordi per coordinare le rispettive attività. La stessa cosa dovrebbe essere fatta su scala europea e l'ETS è uno strumento utile in tal senso, ma è uno sforzo far sedere intorno al tavolo le diverse figure e sviluppare un innovation deal a Bruxelles che invochi questi adattamenti. I vantaggi sono tanti, sono persuaso che tutti gli attori della filiera non potranno che beneficiare di questa integrazione e che è possibile costruire un business case a supporto degli interventi sul suolo per l'adozione di una serie di soluzioni. Qui concludo e ringrazio per la cortese attenzione.
Thank you. Thank you, David. In your last slide, you said you have written that ETS inclusion would be a possible immediate action. So what's your big priority, the most important priority for you? It should be that or another?
For me, this today, considering that we have target at 2030, which is tomorrow, we really need to raise the attention, also because in this moment there are conflicting actions by the Commission. On one hand, we are supporting intervention with the Innovation Fund, Innofin, with RED 2 implementing and so on in this direction. On the other hand, we have a strong resistance to adapt, for example, the ETS to these needs that are financed by the Commission. So it goes beyond what I can do. I'm a technician, but I recommend strongly to look at that.
Okay. Thank you again to David Chiaramonti. And now I have to introduce Vladislav Popov, that is connected with us. Vladislav can hear us?
Yes.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. Somehow I can't share the screen because, I don't know, it gives me that I cannot start screening share while other participants are sharing, so I don't know why.
Okay, we are trying to solve this problem. And while we are trying to solve this problem, I can introduce Vladislav Popov, that is the Vice Rector of Agricultural University of Plovdiv. And he is also the delegate of Bulgaria in the Standing Committee on Agricultural Research of the European Commission.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think that my screen is working well now. My presentation is uploaded.
Okay. We are okay. I think you can start your presentation.
All right. First of all, let me express my gratitude to the organizers for inviting me, and secondly, in particular, to Ms. Bastioli, because she was the one with whom I communicated, and it was of our common interest. But the topic that I would like to speak with you, to present to you, is actually another perspective that we have to think about. Also, in the notion that the future agriculture should be embedded and integrated in the larger bioeconomy, and especially regional bioeconomy. So I have entitled my presentation "Repositioning of Agro-Ecosystem Research and Innovation in the Regional Bioeconomy through Capacity Building." Now, next slide. In the next slide, I just wanted to express what I'm thinking and what we are thinking in the MS-13, let's say the second wave of countries in the European Union. This is to, and also, by the way, the position of SCAR and the discussions that we are discussing in Standing Committee on Agricultural Research for many years already, is the position in agriculture, in agroecosystems, in the bioeconomy, national bioeconomies, and especially in regional bioeconomies. And I have heard in this discussion the plea of Ms. Bastioli, and with whom I fully agree, that the agriculture should reposition itself in the context, in a much larger context of the bioeconomies, and especially regional bioeconomies. And I think Italy is one of the leading countries in this approach. So the thing that we have to pay attention of are the new nexus between the farming systems, agri-food chain, and management of water, for example, because we cannot already perceive agriculture in silos. For instance, agronomy, plant protection, production of yield, food security, etc. But we have to see agriculture and position agriculture in much larger context. And in this sense, the farmers are actually end users and stakeholders of the research and innovation should be much more introduced to and trained to the new technologies that we have heard today, meaning precision technologies, decision support systems, what is the future, new varieties and breeds, agroecological practices, including integrated pest management, agri-food products, business models, and social innovations. So, but we have to, in regards to repositioning of agriculture in the regional bioeconomy, we have to ask the second question, which is also related. Are the modern agri-food systems based on diversity and regional food specialization sufficiently aligned with research and innovation institution strategies? Because by research and innovation institutions, I mean universities and research institutes, not only in developed European countries, but also in Central and Eastern European countries. So what we are doing, because I've been asked to provide examples, is to reposition, for instance, my university, Agriculture University of Plovdiv, to not work anymore, not make research and education and training in silos, but rather see what are the regional contexts, because Bulgaria also, as well as Italy, has diverse regions, and every region has a regional agriculture and food specialization. So we have to see what are the specific agri-food systems in specific bioeconomy context and adjust and align our research and education strategies, I mean university research and innovation strategies to these regional bioeconomies. Now, just an example, for instance, we assess the role of universities and research institutions. I'll give example with our university, but we have been talking just half an hour ago or so about living labs and regional knowledge hubs. For instance, my region of Plovdiv is working on such regional living labs. Why? Because this is probably one of the most efficient and effective ways to get policy support, to showcase best practices, to get public-private financing and efficient use of knowledge and data. But this is not the only example. For instance, we may take another example, which is based on place-based innovation ecosystems. For instance, very famous Arvalis R&D ecosystem in France, where you can have an ecosystem of academic research, farmers, farm advisory, and applied research. Why? Because all these research results related to the new technologies and innovations can be provided to farmers in the fastest possible way. But then the third question is, do we have enough capacities in each country, member state of the European Union, to first of all reposition and place agriculture in the context of bioeconomy, and next to develop bioeconomy in the coming years? So how to build capacities in bioeconomy research and innovation, and which approaches we may use to the knowledge transfer. And one of the examples that you can check on the internet is a project that we run already for 2 years. It's called CAP Bio for BG. This is to adapt a capacity building framework and a new research and innovation program in bioeconomy by combining know-how from advanced EU universities, Wageningen, University College of Dublin, and University of Bologna. And you see what we are trying to change is, again, for a third time, not thinking and not making research and training programs, education programs based on purely agrarian problems and topics, but rather combine the key pillars of the bioeconomy, or adapt these education programs based on the pillars of the bioeconomy, being biomass production, biorefinery and conversion, bio-based circular economy, and society and bioeconomy. In that case, we are also working in probably 2 or 3 projects with the University of Bologna, with Camelina, by the way, and European Energy Association, which is actively run by University of Bologna. So we are rather happy to get transfer of knowledge and collaborate with the European University. And I think that's the way, by sharing knowledge between research and education institutions, to build capacities for the future experts and specialists in bioeconomy. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you to Vladislav Popov for your intervention. And I would like to close this panel asking to Vladislav Popov, as we have done with other panelists, if you would leave us what is the main priority for you to set the course for soil regeneration.
Thank you. I was provoked by this discussion from today. And again, the notion that we will not continue, we don't have to continue work in silos, but rather to use systematic approach to farming systems, especially in regards to research and education, in order to serve farmers, because our future experts and specialists, I mean, the graduate students will become future farmers and specialists, but rather the instruments with which we can use to get to this system approach. And one of the instruments, by the way, is that the European Commission is putting much higher amount of money in the strategic plans for development of agriculture to support the AKIS, the advisory system in each country. But this advisory system, by the way, should not continue to train farmers in agroecology and organic farming only. We have seen today that there are many other new approaches and new practices. I mean, the regenerative farming, the carbon farming, also so-called, we call it in Bulgaria, conservation farming. That's the zero and minimum tillage of soil. And I have to tell that I put a lot of efforts to convince my government, the Minister of Agriculture, to introduce a new intervention in the new strategic plan of Bulgaria that will support, give subsidies to our farmers that are practicing conservation farming, conservation tillage and minimum tillage, zero tillage and minimum tillage. Why? Because we realize that we have to keep our soil healthy in the next years. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again to Vladislav Popov, and a special thank by Catia Bastioli that is here with me. So we are closing this second part of the international session. So thanks again to the four panelists, Pedro Berliner, Bram Moiskops, David Chiaramonti, and Vladislav Popov. And now we are going to the end of this morning with the last panelist, that is about the Prep Soil project. So we are glad to have here with us in a remote connection Mrs. Margaret Balling-Ostgaard, that is she is the technical project manager of a Prep Soil project. And she is also a business and international coordinator of the Danish Center for Food and Agriculture and Center for Circular Bioeconomy at Aarhus University in Denmark. So thank you to Mrs. Margaret Balling-Ostgaard, and the floor is yours.
And thank you very much for your invitation. And I will share my screen now. I hope you can see it now. Is it okay?
Not yet.
Not yet, but we...
Not yet. You are sharing the screen, it says. So you don't see it. I'll stop sharing again and try again. No. Share the screen. It's a bit strange.
Lei che sta condividendo la telecamera e non lo schermo.
I can see you don't see it. Well, can you put my presentation on then?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we can try to.
It's a bit strange. Really? Now I have stopped sharing.
Okay, now we are trying to.
Yeah.
Okay, we are ready.
Okay.
We can see your presentation.
So I would like you to switch then. I can only see it on your screen behind you. There it is. Okay, thank you. I would like to present the Prep Soil project. That is a project from the call in 21 and preparing the ground for healthy soils. And it's a very ambitious project, but it has already been followed by many new projects and calls that also sometimes overlap these goals of this project. But the coordinator and where I come from is the Danish Center for Food and Agriculture at Aarhus University in Denmark. And the project is a 3-year-long project, just started 1st of July this year. And the objectives of the project is to evaluate soil needs in regions in Europe across different soil types, because so far the EJP soil has established some soil hubs, but mainly on agriculture. And now we want to extend it to forestry and urban soils and post-industrial soils. And another important objective is to extend the EJP soil hubs and to define business models for living labs and lighthouses. So this is like a project going to, prepare the ground for living labs and lighthouses projects. And next, please. We also need to develop and launch a web portal, and you will get the address for that. It has already been done, where we will collect the knowledge concerning all kinds of information about soils, and generate spaces for knowledge exchange also on the web portal. And there's a work package concerning education and social initiatives and soil ambassadors. Next, please. And there's also work packages concerning soil monitoring and observations. So please, next. So the main objectives, the key principles of a project is, of course, stock taking, open science. It has to be flexible in collaboration with the mission, and we have a broad consortium, and we work with stakeholder management, where we right now have set out the guidelines for identifying new stakeholders. And we are also right now working with the guidelines to make soil needs assessments. And as I said, we will work with monitoring and living labs, where we will actually make some business model plans. And we have this main web portal we call a one-stop shop. And then we have a lot of events and activities going on during the next 3 years. Next, please. And the whole project is building on the old, or the actually still running project EJP Soil, and the just ended project SMS project. And this, I hope you will be able to read when you get the copies of the slides. But it is just to show you that we have work packages on a lot of different areas, where there are also calls in each of the areas now, focusing on what we are doing in each work package. But if you change to the next, you will see that the hoped or the expected outcomes of this project is to increase soil literacy, awareness, and societal appreciation, and to improve the knowledge base and the access to critical information on land managers, and interaction spaces for effective mission deployment. So, and we have right now 19 partners in 12 countries, and we will actually extend the soil needs evaluation to 19 different regions in the EU, and in the long run they will be extended to all the EU countries and associated countries. Please, next. And the ambitious web portal is the key tool for this, and where we will connect existing online resources. So we will actually make connections to all those databases and collection of data concerning soil health that is already existing, and in different languages, and Yeah, go on to the next one, please. Yeah, please go on again. And just to tell you, we have the 19 partners widely spread in Europe, and between them, they will cover all the EU countries when we are mapping soil needs of Europe, which is a main task in this project. And for your information, of course, the webpage for this one-stop shop where you will be able to find all kinds of information in the future. This is it, PrepSoil EU. So I think that was the short version right before lunch. Thank you.
Thanks a lot to Margaret Balling-Osgard for your presentation and to have been with us this morning. And with your intervention, we can close this international session of this morning. I would like to give the floor to Catia Bastioli.
Just 1 minute because it's too late, but I feel that I thank all the people who intervened in this conference. I feel that what we can conclude is that there is a perfect alignment of all people about the fact that the soil is so fundamental, the soil at the center of local developments, and it's a part of environment. It delivers so big amount of services, ecosystems, and we have lack of knowledge in any case of this sector, and we have to regenerate it. And the point is how to do this. Bioeconomy is if declined in the logic of territorial regeneration with the soil health at the center and interconnecting different sectors, can be an instrument which is very powerful. So we need to, I think that everybody stressed the fact that bioeconomy is not a general concept. It has to be declined in the local areas because the diversity and specificities of areas require different type of projects. So it's very important, the concept of learning by doing. I appreciated a lot also the intervention of Professor Popov on education, and research, which has to be connected with the opportunities and problems of the local areas in order really to address the problems and create opportunities. And so education of everybody of us, together with the universities, etc., to change, to have a cultural change. I think that all these elements are important, but what is clear is that the legislations, the policies are so fundamental. They cannot be silos. They cannot be top-down. And so we have to remove also at this stage the perverse effects that legislations in contrast with the logic of bioeconomy creates. So from my side, I think that it's very important to create a space of free experimentation, and it's really needed to have bioeconomy recognized with NACEE codes at European level in order to have an area which has its clear identification, where byproducts, products, and all end-of-life logics, etc., can be managed in a different way in order that we can, and with the monitoring systems we are developing, which are growing with JRC and with the local, national programs, can really help and support the local projects in order to evolve rapidly with knowledge, and also to face the critical issue of time, because we are with the acceleration of degradation processes, which is very, very critical. So we have to increase the speed of action in order to block the degradation phenomena, which are very critical. So it's very, very relevant to have the case studies, to learn from the case studies. I think in the afternoon there will be some other elements added, and this is a very critical element. Learning, open mind, and legislation which is flexible enough and interconnected, which is not easy. But I think Italy, with the experience built and then connected with other countries, I heard about Israel. I think we need to have interconnected local projects to really create a bioeconomy of Europe, a bioeconomy at international level, but with the roots in the local areas and the head in the world. So this is the view of bioeconomy that it comes out also from what we discussed today. And so I think the manifesto that we will have from the conference, from this conference, could be the starting point to act at practical level, at government's level, at region levels, to really change the path. Thank you to everybody.
So I have nothing to say more after the closing of Catia Bastioli. So we have a break, and then in the afternoon we will begin at 2:30 p.m. with the national session of the first edition of the States General of Soil Health. Thank you to everybody, and thank you to all the panelists of this morning.